Welcome, everybody, to the NFL Show on the Gruely Truth Sports Network. I'm your host for the NFL Show, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I'd like to welcome my co-host, as always, from the FF Face-Off, Anthony Cervino. How you doing, Anthony?
I'm doing great, Mike. How are you?
All right. Did you win any fantasy championships last night?
I did. I won 2 championships, and I'm in another league where it's tournament seeding, and once the points are tallied, there's a chance that I'll add a third to that.
Oh, so Jerry Jones wouldn't even like you because you win championships.
Yeah.
All right. Next up, usually on Wednesday, we have Sam in to talk quarterback rankings. Today, though, it's Tuesday because tomorrow's Christmas, and Sam's a really popular guy, so he's not available on Christmas. Help me welcome to the show, Sam Teets. How you doing, Sam?
I'm doing good, Mike. Thanks for having me on.
All right, so let's start off and let's talk a little Monday Night Football where the Green Bay Packers beat the Minnesota Vikings 23-10. I don't know. What's your first take on this game, Anthony?
You know, I thought it was a really ugly game on both sides. I think that both teams showed glaring weaknesses 2 weeks before the playoffs.
Yeah, and to me, Anthony, the glaring weakness with the Vikings is no Dalvin Cook, no play-action passing, and it's going to be real rough for Minnesota to score points.
Yeah, and, I've been sold on Kirk Cousins for the way he's played this season, but I don't know if this takes away from him because most quarterbacks need pieces around him, but without Dalvin Cook in that running game, he's handicapped.
Well,
and you highlighted it with the play-action passing.
Yeah.
That's Kirk Cousins. That's what he does best.
Yeah, and with no running game, I think the Vikings are a good run-blocking team, but pass-blocking-wise, Sam, they're horrible. And with no running game, this team has no chance to go anywhere. Now, of course, Dalvin Cook may be back by the playoffs, but if there's no Dalvin Cook here, Minnesota's in trouble whether they're home or not.
Yeah, and you mentioned the pass blocking. Darius Smith alone had 3.5 sacks last night on Kirk Cousins. So not only does he not have the running game, not only does he not have the play-action pass, he's facing pressure the entire night. And you can obviously see that.
I think though, that pressure comes from the fact that there was no threat. They didn't care about the play-action pass because there was no run game. And with no run game, that's taken away. And those tackles, I mean, the tackle going up against him could have been Casper the Friendly Ghost.
Oh, yeah, I mean, without a doubt, I mean, look at the biggest difference in this game. Minnesota has 57 rushing yards, and they're averaging 3.6 yards per carry. Green Bay has 184 rushing yards, and they're averaging 5.8 yards per carry. And that ends up making the difference at the end of the day. So with Dalvin Cook, it's an entirely different game. But as it is, no Dalvin Cook, Minnesota looks pretty weak.
Well, how about this? I wasn't impressed with either team. I think the Packers' defense has improved. They can run the ball. Throwing the ball wise, I don't know. You got Devontae Adams and then a bunch
And that's it.
Yeah, and a bunch of guys. I mean, when I look at this, and we had this conversation about Seattle yesterday where I said there's no way they're a Super Bowl contender. I don't think either one of these teams are, even though they're in the playoffs. And everybody's going to say, well, maybe Aaron Rodgers can go off in the playoffs. But we haven't seen Aaron Rodgers go off a whole hell of a lot this year.
No, Aaron Rodgers, he's had a few games where he looked like himself. But the weapons just aren't there. In fact, I believe whether it's Matt LaFleur's doing or just the lack of reliable pass catchers not named Devontae Adams, the Packers are very much a running team. And, outside of Adams, their 2 best receivers are Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones, their running backs.
Yeah, and when we look at it, Minnesota looks like they're going to be probably the 6th seed. And the 3 seed, by my guess, is going to be who? The Packers, maybe? So Packers-Vikings, one of them is going to get to win a playoff game. But when you have to go to New Orleans or San Francisco, I don't hold out a whole lot of hope here for them past that, Sam.
Yeah, I really don't. think neither of these teams really, if you go off what they had last night, are elite. If you're talking about teams that I'm really afraid of if I'm playing in the playoffs, it's like San Francisco, New Orleans, like you mentioned. But Green Bay and Minnesota right now, their quarterbacks aren't playing well. They've got some health issues. I just don't see either of these teams making that deep playoff run, especially against the defense that you'll find in San Francisco or going up against someone like Drew Brees, who's been on fire the entire time.
Yeah, and we'll talk about playoff scenarios, and there's not many scenarios left here, whether it's the AFC or the NFC. And the Seattle Seahawks, who have lost pretty much every running back they have, signed a couple, and today announced that they signed Marshawn Lynch. This screams to me that there's a lot of trouble in Seattle, Sam.
Yeah, if you're Seattle, I mean, this is really problematic for you because the Seahawks are a team that pride themselves on running the football. Even with Russell Wilson at quarterback, this is a team that regularly runs for 100 yards per game. They're one of the top 5 rushing offenses in the NFL. And now you lose Rashad Penny in Week 14. You just lost Chris Carson last week, along with C.J. Prosise. So you're down to your 4th running back in Travis Homer, and you sign Robert Turbin and Marshawn Lynch. And while that might be Marshawn Lynch coming back to Seattle as a feel-good story, I don't think it's actually going to translate to wins on the football field.
Yeah. Anthony? Anthony? Did we lose Anthony?
I'm here.
Come on, Anthony. If you keep this up, I'm going to bring up the fact that the Jets beat the Cowboys.
You bring up the Seahawks, you bring up Marshawn Lynch. Last offseason, Marshawn Lynch, there was a chance that he was going to return to Oakland. Then Oakland ended up drafting Josh Jacobs. And I think for Marshawn Lynch, seeing the writing on the wall, he hung it up. I believe this is a player. I mean, he's obviously fresh. He's a guy, he's not sitting back and getting and eating at the end of his career. He's an avid traveler. He works out. I think that he can help the Seahawks for 3 games. Is he better than what they have in a C.J. Prosise who can't stay healthy, and he's a primary receiver anyway? And then, what is it, Travis Homer? I mean, they also brought in Robert Turbin. These are both Lynch and Turbin know the system. They know the offense, and I think it's better than what they have on the current roster, and that's not saying much.
All right, so my question to you is this, Anthony. Can they beat San Francisco with Marshawn Lynch as their main running back?
I wouldn't rule it out, but that's not because of Marshawn Lynch. It's because of the Russell Wilson factor, who, you say, was probably the most underrated quarterback of all time. I believe it as well. And you could say the same thing about an Aaron Rodgers. These guys are special players who can make special things happen.
Yeah, but the big difference is this. Russell Wilson's not nearly as old as Aaron Rodgers.
Right. I'm just including Rodgers in there because it is possible. If there's 4 quarterbacks in the playoffs who are up against the wall, Drew Brees obviously has weapons, but Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, and Russell Wilson, who probably have, of all the playoff teams, the least to work with, you can't rule them out, A, because of experience, B, because they've been there before, and C, because they have the intangibles.
Yeah, and I'll say the same thing I said the first time San Francisco played Seattle. I thought San Francisco would handle them, but don't let the game be within a score with the last 5 minutes left, and that's what they did, Sam.
Yeah, I think if this game is close at the end, Russell Wilson gives Seattle a huge boost. I just feel like Seattle's that kind of team that if it's close at the end of the game, you got that all-time great quarterback, you're able to go out there and make some plays, and suddenly you're going to win the game with maybe 10 seconds left on the clock, and San Francisco's out of luck. But I also want to point out that the 49ers lost 2 weeks ago to the Atlanta Falcons, and Seattle just lost to the Arizona Cardinals last week. So these are both supposedly elite teams that have losses to bad teams in the last couple of weeks right now. So I feel like anything's possible here in Week 17.
Yeah, but I think the difference is the 49ers were really banged up 2 weeks ago, and it seems like they're starting to get healthier now. And if they don't sustain any injuries in the Seattle game, when you get to that first playoff game, it may be the healthiest they've been all year.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's probably nice for San Francisco is that everything's timing up well for them, but it's going the opposite way for Seattle right now. Now, whether Seattle can just pull things together for like one final push here and get that win against San Francisco, I mean, that's something we have to see in Week 17. But once the postseason starts, it's a whole new ballgame.
Yeah, and Green Bay here, Anthony, with a win over Detroit and a San Francisco loss is the number 1 seed. And it looks like with a win, they're going to be no worse than a number 2 seed, so people will have to go through Lambeau Field.
Yeah, and that's a very tough place to play to begin with, and that's a very tough place to beat Aaron Rodgers, receivers or not.
Well, not really. He's lost a lot of games there recently.
But this, I don't know. There's something different about this Packers team. No, Aaron Rodgers isn't scoring at will. But what has he thrown? 2 or 3 interceptions all year. This guy's not going to. Yeah, he's not going to lose the game for you. And the difference between this Packers team from probably going back to the last Packers team is not only the defense, but the way they can run the football. Aaron Jones had a monster game on the road in Minnesota against a very, very good Minnesota front seven. Nobody expected that, especially in the fantasy football world, because people were starting Mike Boone over Aaron Jones against my best judgment.
Yeah, but I'll give you this. The first quarter of that game, their defense took care of Green Bay. I think what happens here is with no play action, they were going 3 and out constantly, and I think it just kind of wears out the defense. And I think people forget that a lot of times lack of offensive productivity can lead to your defense looking really bad.
I'll tell you what. You're talking about how Seattle's hurting for injuries, all these teams hurting for injuries. Am I crazy to think that the Eagles can make a run?
The Eagles are hurting more than all of them from injuries, but you're not crazy
to
think that.
Your guy,
because
Carson Wentz, I'm becoming a Carson Wentz guy. If all the Eagles have to do, they have to take care of the Giants, and they're expected to get Jordan Howard back, which is going to help control the ball and the tempo in the playoffs. But they're also, you win one home game, and Deshaun Jackson will be eligible to play in the divisional round. So all of a sudden, you get a big play receiver back. You have Greg Ward emerging a little bit. The practice squad receiver. I don't know. You have these tight ends, Miles Sanders. The defense is playing a lot better in December than it had in the first 3 months of the season. And Doug Peterson. I'm starting to convince myself this Eagles team can be extremely dangerous. Carson Wentz is playing with the chip on his back because everybody wanted Nick Foles, and Eagles fans were questioning, should we have signed Nick Foles? And now Wentz is making this magical run, and he's not only winning games, he's throwing 300 yards a clip. And yes, it's against bad defenses and bad secondaries, but look what he has to work with.
He's got bad wide receivers.
What people don't understand, these are still professional teams. These are NFL teams. Regardless.
Yeah. Well,
so
I'll tell you
have
this.
Practice squad players beating NFL starters. That's impressive, and that's all Carson Wentz.
It's not all Carson Wentz. A lot of that's Doug Peterson too, and I know you've given me crap about that because just a week ago you were ripping on Doug Peterson.
Oh,
Yeah. Well, you did. Sam probably heard that where you said he'd won a Super Bowl, but what else has he done? And what else he done is he went to the playoffs last year and won a playoff game. He's going to go to the playoffs this year. He should. I still think they're going to have their hands full with the Giants and Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, I was just going to go there. Saquon is finally looking like he's healthy. He's running the football. Daniel Jones is starting to come around. I believe he was the first quarterback in NFL history to throw, 350 yards, 5 touchdowns, and no picks in his rookie year.
Yeah. We also had a game where he threw for 50 yards and 4 picks in the same year.
But, Jameis Winston still, he still has that capability, and he's in year 4 or 5.
Well, then Daniel Jones was a bust as a pick like Jameis Winston. Because I think Jameis Winston has some redeeming qualities, but when you draft a guy as high as they've drafted those guys, you can't have 5 interception games. I'll give Jones a pass just because he's a rookie. Winston, no longer. I could also tell you this. Sam, it sounds like I've had a calming influence on Anthony and his perspective on Carson Wentz, Kirk Cousins, and Doug Peterson.
Yeah, I know. I'm hearing things I think would have been impossible for me to hear a couple of weeks ago. Like this is an entirely new person we're talking to here. I don't know if Anthony's all right.
They're they're proving it though. They're doing what they need to do.
Yeah, and I think I think the reason I don't think you're crazy saying the Eagles could make a little run here is when you look at the 6 teams in the AFC play or the NFC playoffs, the team with the best coach is Philadelphia.
Wow.
And that's not even close.
Sean Payton?
Sean Payton?
Come on.
Okay. Wait a second. Because you gave me crap. I would take Doug Peterson over Sean Payton in a heartbeat. Sean Payton has been in New Orleans how long?
A long time.
And probably at least half those seasons were no playoffs. You gave me crap for giving Doug Peterson too much credit for one Super Bowl that he won, and he's been there 3 years. Sean Payton's won 1, lost multiple home playoff games in the playoffs. I think Sean Payton is a good football coach. I think Doug Peterson's better.
See, that's a stretch.
Really? Is it a stretch? Let's look at it. Look at it this way. Are you
going to take Doug Peterson over Andy Reid?
Oh, yeah, in a heartbeat.
Wow. I don't know. I like the tenured guys who've been there for a while. And
that have failed miserably continuously?
Yeah, but they've had consistent success despite not winning the Super Bowl in Reid's case. And let me tell you something. This Andy Reid team, as long as Andy Reid doesn't pull an Andy Reid in the playoffs.
There you go. Right there. Stop. You could not sit there and defend Andy Reid against Doug Peterson and then say, well, as long as he doesn't do what he does in the playoffs. That is my problem with Andy Reid. Andy Reid got the Eagles to how many championship games? Like 5 or 6. He got to the Super Bowl once. He lost, and he was badly outcoached in that game by Bill Belichick. Doug Peterson beat Bill Belichick. Doug Peterson took the Philadelphia Eagles to the NFC Championship game in, his second season? And he beat the New England Patriots. So we could sit there. That would be like saying Andy Reid's better than Vince Lombardi. Because Vince Lombardi only coached 10 years in the NFL. Andy Reid's coached 20. I mean, length of how long you're there has no bearing. I would take, if you gave me an NFL team right now, and said, you can have Doug Peterson or Andy Reid coach your team, I'm going to take Doug Peterson because Doug Peterson's going to play football the way it's supposed to be played, which means he's going to smack you in the mouth.
Doug Peterson's also an Andy Reid disciple.
I don't care. What the hell does that matter? There's been a ton of great coaches that were disciples off of terrible coaches. And there's been plenty of terrible coaches that were disciples from great coaches. You know what? When I played football, high school, college and stuff, my teams always sucked. And you know how I learned how to coach?
How?
I paid attention to what these idiots that were coaching me told me, and as soon as I became a coach, I did stuff the exact opposite way. You know, so you can learn from an idiot as long as you realize he's an idiot. And I'm not saying Andy Reid's an idiot, but I'm telling you this. In the playoffs, Andy Reid, this is the difference. A great coach to me is a guy that's not afraid to play to win the game. Sean McDermott does that. Doug Peterson does that. Andy Reid has never done that. And that's why Andy Reid still don't have no rings on his fingers.
Is this Andy Reid's best opportunity to win a Super Bowl? Like, you know, taking his dominant Philly teams in consideration?
No, last year was. He had home field advantage through the entire thing.
I'm talking about team-wise, because last year's team, they were outscoring everybody. They couldn't stop anybody. This defense is different. This defense can play.
Well, this defense is not different, and this defense cannot play because you run between the tackles, you can gouge them all day. I watched the Tennessee Titans play that way and put 35 points on them. So, who have they beaten? Sam, who have the Chiefs beaten over the last 4 or 5 games? They beat the Raiders, who they shut down. They won the other night against the Bears. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say this defense is great because they did that. They shut down the Patriots, but who doesn't right now? But I'll tell you this.
I mean, if you really want,
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, if you want to look at the Chiefs games against decent teams, they played the Packers a couple weeks ago. They lost to the Packers.
At home.
31 points. Yeah, they lost to the Texans. The Texans scored 31 points.
At home.
Yeah. They beat the Ravens, but the Ravens had 28 points, and that was before Lamar Jackson became Lamar Jackson. So that's probably their best win of the year, I guess you could say. But that's like all the way back in week 3 or 4. So the Chiefs hasn't had a lot of great weeks recently.
And I think Lamar Jackson was Lamar Jackson then. The Ravens' defense was what was different at that point.
That's true. They had Marcus Peters, and everything kind of gelled together from there. Everything changed for them.
Yeah, because if I remember right, Lamar Jackson had a pretty good game there and almost pulled it off at the end.
Yeah.
Listen, if I've said it on this show, I've said it on my show, and I've said it on social media. If the Ravens end up making a run, Lamar Jackson's going to get the credit, but Marcus Peters is the player that changed the direction of this team.
Who brought in Marcus Peters?
A good head coach.
John Harbaugh.
John
Harbaugh's entire reason.
Their general manager, Ozzie Newsome.
Huh?
I love
Ozzie Newsome retired a few years ago.
Yeah, Ozzie Newsome.
No, he actually still has an office, and he's still very much involved with the Ravens.
But he's not the GM. And I guarantee you it was a John Harbaugh move. Because I don't think anything happens there unless John Harbaugh approves it. Because he's been there long enough to get that.
John Harbaugh is a top coach in the league. I remember when John Harbaugh was an assistant in Philadelphia, a special teams guy.
Yeah. Too bad the Cowboys didn't get him, huh? But he'd have been fired because he wouldn't have went along with the games Jerry Jones plays. Right now, if I had to ask you who's coming out of the NFC and going to the Super Bowl, who would you take, Sam?
That's a bit tough. I would probably say the two teams that I think have the best shot are your San Francisco or New Orleans, because Philadelphia. I like Philadelphia and what they have, but at the same point, I feel like their talent is eventually going to strap them, and eventually they're going to run to a wall. I just can't get through. Seattle, I don't trust at all because Seattle's wishy-washy every week. They play well one week, they're terrible the next. Green Bay, I don't trust because Aaron Rodgers isn't himself, and I don't trust the coach there. So I think New Orleans or San Francisco are probably going to be the ones coming out of the NFC.
All right. Anthony, agree or disagree?
I agree it's going to be one of those two teams. But the more I think about trying to, of course, the Eagles still need to qualify, and they probably will. If Philly has to go to Green Bay at some point, you got to remember, Jordan Howard had a big game against them, and he's used to playing in Lambeau from his years in Chicago. So I think that helps Philly. But, yeah, the clear favorites have to be the 49ers and the Saints.
Yeah, and the thing that's amazing about that is the Saints, if everything goes the way people expect this week, are going to be a number 3 seed.
Wow.
Because right now, if San Francisco and Green Bay win, those are the 1 and 2 seeds. And Seattle would be 3, New Orleans would be 3, and they would have to host Minnesota with possibly a healthy Dalvin Cook. But I think that they would win that game in New Orleans, and then New Orleans would go to Green Bay, and I think New Orleans would roll Green Bay. So, and then you got San Francisco against either Philadelphia or Seattle. I really like right now. I would like Philadelphia if they played Seattle, and I think you end up with a championship game with the Saints at the 49ers. And I think that would be a great game. And my caveat here is this. If Alvin Kamara stays healthy and looks like he did the other day, I think New Orleans goes to the Super Bowl out of that. Because that pass rush is really good also. All right, let's look at the AFC, where Baltimore has clinched home field advantage. Houston is the AFC South champions. Kansas City is the AFC West champions. Of course, the Patriots are the AFC East champions. I think they clinched that 12 years ago and have been doing it ever since. The Buffalo Bills are a wild card. Now, the other wild card is going to come down between the Steelers, Titans, and believe it or not, the Oakland Raiders. And the Raiders needed like 10 things to happen going into this last week, and half of them did happen. They need 5 more things to happen, but I think they're going to be bit in the ass because there's no Lamar Jackson in one game, and I don't think the Texans need to win, so that's probably going to fall through for them. I would say it's safe to say I think the Titans are going to get the last playoff spot. Anybody disagree?
No, not at all. And I hope it's the Titans because I've been saying it for a while. I think they are a sleeper team. Just like the Eagles in the NFC, I think the Titans could be a sleeper team to make a run, but they really need Derrick Henry healthy. They cannot do it without Derrick Henry.
Yeah, because the interesting thing here with a healthy Derrick Henry, I think the way this will play out, if everything goes according to plan this week, is Tennessee would be what, the 5 seed or the 6 seed? So they're the 6 seed. They would probably go to Kansas City. And they have already proven they can beat Kansas City in Kansas City. Same question here. AFC-wise, who comes out of the AFC, Anthony?
Can you come back? Let me think about this and come back to me.
Okay, Anthony passed.
Sam first.
Sam, what do you think?
I'm going to just stick with Baltimore because I know as a Steelers fan, sometimes Baltimore gets on a roll going into the playoffs, and it can be terrifying sometimes. I think Baltimore's a good match for New England. I just feel like they've had their number in recent years, and with Lamar Jackson, I know Bill Belichick's incredible. I know that coaching staff can pull just a lot of rabbits out of their hats and do a lot of crazy things. I just don't know if they're going to be able to fix the Lamar Jackson problem with the amount of talent they have in their current roster. As far as I'm concerned, Houston, Kansas City, Tennessee, and Buffalo are all on a lower level than Baltimore and New England.
Yeah, but I think they're all 3 capable. And see, I don't. I think Baltimore is on a separate level from all of them. But we have the big question of this. When you look at this, Joe Flacco was the quarterback before, and Joe Flacco was a beast in the playoffs. And I know everybody's going to say I'm nuts here, but we don't know what Lamar Jackson is in the playoffs. And we just had a Twitter message from Robert in L.A. who says Kansas City beats the Ravens in the AFC title game. San Francisco beats New Orleans. So.
See, I don't know about that because Baltimore almost beat Kansas City earlier this season, and that was before Marcus Peters got to Baltimore, and that was before Lamar Jackson really got hot and went on this crazy run to end the year. So I don't know if Kansas City can do that because Kansas City has a better secondary than last year, but I still don't know if they have enough to stop Baltimore. I don't think they have the players inside either, the linebackers specifically, to match up with someone like Mark Ingram or Lamar Jackson who gets outside the pocket.
Well, how about this? A Kansas City-Baltimore matchup is John Harbaugh, who's not afraid to take a chance to win a game, against Andy Reid, who, gets the old proverbial tight butt in playoff games. So if it comes down to Kansas City-Baltimore, I'm taking Baltimore just because of John Harbaugh. I think he's a lot better than Andy Reid. I think the interesting question here, and I'll shoot this at Anthony, is the Houston Texans. Is Will Fuller going to be healthy? And they took J.J. Watt off of IR.
I don't know. I'm not there on the Texans, and yeah, Watt's going to be a big help. Will Fuller, he is not going to play in Week 17. He's facing a 3-week recovery window, so there's a chance he's back at some point of the playoffs. There's a slight chance he's in on a wild card game, but that could be in a decoy role or a very limited role. But if you're going to ask me, back to this Kansas City, Baltimore, New England, they're my top 3 teams. And I keep going back and forth in this. And I looked up the Kansas City defense. Last year, going into the postseason, they were number 24. And it's not a big increase, but as we sit right now, they're the number 17 ranked defense. So they jumped up.
How many points were they giving up a game last year?
Let's see. Last year,
Yeah.
Points. This is why we need a Jeopardy sound drop.
Hum, Sam. Hum.
Mm-hmm.
I was kidding, Sam. Don't hum. Because my point is this. While Anthony looks
24
up
points, 24.8.
what are they giving up a game this year?
How did I know that was coming next?
Because that's all that matters. Because I don't care about total yards. It only cares about how many points you give up. It drives me nuts when people say, well, they're the number 1 defense, but they're number 9 in giving up points. The best defense is one.
Right now they're at 17.9.
So that's a much bigger difference than last year. And that's what I was trying to get to. I didn't know which way it would go, but they're giving up a touchdown less on average per game. So if they're only giving up 17 points a game, they're a lot better than the 17th ranked defense. I still think they can be run at. And the playoffs are a different breed. And the NFL is so wonked out now that you've only got, less than half the teams in each league or each conference are even good. So it can be skewed because you play so many inferior teams if you're really a top-notch team.
I think, with the defensive improvement, the fact that they can maintain, more than a 2 or 3 minute drive instead of just scoring at will. If Andy Reid doesn't get there this year, then I'm going to at least start questioning the legacy. Because I'm a big Andy Reid guy, but, this has to be it for Reid. And they also, and they are 2-0 against Lamar Jackson.
Well, how long has he been a head coach in the NFL? About 20 years?
Yeah.
All right. So 20 years, no championship, and you're still not questioning it? Because if he wins the Super Bowl, it'll be 1 out of 21 then.
Is he like another Marty Schottenheimer? Is that what Reid is going to be?
He doesn't touch Marty Schottenheimer. Marty Schottenheimer, other than that Chargers team, and what was it? I forget what year it was, but the year that they fumbled the ball on the interception where they probably would have went to the Super Bowl, Marty Schottenheimer took the Cleveland Browns, who Sam Rutigliano and the front office had wrecked in the early 80s, and he took over in the middle of 84. By the end of 85, he had him in the playoffs. He lost the championship game in 86, 87, lost in the playoffs in 88. 86, 87, 88, he was rolling with Bernie Kosar. He leaves Cleveland to go to Kansas City after they fired him after 88. The Browns made it with Bud Carson in the championship game in 89, and then they completely tanked. So when he left, that team basically sank. He goes to Kansas City and almost immediately has them in the playoffs. Those Chiefs teams were rolling to the playoffs with Steve DeBerg. I know, and then he got a 34-year-old with a bad back, Joe Montana, and then he gets fired there. The Chiefs don't do no good no more. He goes to San Diego, and all of a sudden, they're a playoff team again. Andy Reid, I think, in Philadelphia and Kansas City, especially in Kansas City last year, probably had the best team. He had home field advantage, and he blew it. That simple. So he's had 20 years to do this. And Marty Schottenheimer turned around multiple teams, but I don't think Marty Schottenheimer ever really had the team to win it, except for, was that 2006 when they were 14-2?
With the Chargers? Yeah, right around there.
Yeah, and they had the game won. They intercepted Tom Brady, and instead of just taking a knee with the interception, the guy tries to return it. He fumbles the ball back. Brady gets it, throws a touchdown pass. They win the game. I don't think that's on Schottenheimer. I don't think that Andy Reid makes a pimple on Marty Schottenheimer's ass. That's just my opinion. I mean, he looks like a walrus.
Well, it looks like he trimmed down a little bit since his couple of years ago.
Well, I don't know, and Sam, maybe you can answer on this. Why would somebody that was obese want to be on TV?
It's a good question. I don't know. I'm not obese myself, but
yeah, because you might someday be on TV. You don't want to be fat. I can tell you this. The first arena coaching job I got in Evansville, I probably weighed like 290 pounds. And I started seeing these pictures on Facebook of me. And I told our photographer, you don't take another picture of me. You know, it's just the way it was. And then in between that season and the next season, I lost 90 pounds. Then I demanded pictures to be taken of me because I looked damn good when I weighed 200 pounds. I just figured I'd bring in a little bit of, you know. I mean, Anthony, you're the same way, right? If you're a big obese dude, you don't want to get your picture taken on, put on Facebook, do you?
Probably not.
No. And I mean, I'm in Evansville, and there's a picture of me on the front page, and I look like a freaking grizzly bear or something. Only I didn't have any hair. But all right, so what is our take on the Buffalo Bills? Are they a legit threat right now, Anthony? Or have they overachieved and this is going to be over quickly?
I don't know. I like to think that, yes, they probably did overachieve, but they do have a shot to win a playoff game. This isn't a Tyrod Taylor, and I like Tyrod Taylor, but I think Josh Allen is a better quarterback than Tyrod was, who I believe was a quarterback a couple of years ago when the Bills made it. I think the defense is better. Tre'Davious White's one of the best shutdown corners in the league. It's just a matter of Josh Allen. Can he get more out of these receivers? And I think we talked about these receivers, Bills not having a number one. John Brown is going to have to try to find a way to play like a number one wide receiver if the Bills are going to make a run.
Yeah, so that means they can't make a run. I think they'd be, a 5 seed, so they play Houston. They could beat Houston.
They took Baltimore to the wire. They've taken New England to the wire.
This is the thing, though. I don't think they're going to get blown out by anybody. But there's a difference between losing a close game and being able to win that game. So they took them to the wire at home also. Go ahead.
I think what Buffalo does with their defense is Buffalo keeps the score low or low enough that the offense can stay in the game. Maybe they pull it out in the end. But I think they can do that against a team like Houston. But the issue is if you play a team with a good head coach, like another good head coach winning a strong tournament, like a Baltimore, maybe a New England, if you get down to the wire at the end of the game, you might not win. But you can do that against someone like Houston or Kansas City maybe.
Yeah, because the coaching's not as good. And if it's a close game, that defense and the coaching can get you over the top.
Yeah, I think they can get, like I said, they can get that against some teams, but I don't think they can do that to Baltimore or New England. So I think you're looking at a second-round exit here, probably.
Yeah, I could go with that. If Houston's the 4 seed, which it looks like they are, then I think Buffalo gets a win. They probably go to Baltimore, unless Tennessee beats Kansas City. If Tennessee beats Kansas City, then all that's out the road, because then Tennessee would be going to Baltimore. And I think that would be a highly competitive game. Buffalo would be going to New England, which we've seen twice. They can play with them. I mean, then you never know what you get. I mean, what if Tennessee, in Lamar Jackson's first playoff game, Derrick Henry's healthy, runs for 150 yards, and they squeak it out? Then all of a sudden, Buffalo or New England host the AFC Championship game. And I know that's a lot of what-ifs, Anthony, but I think all that stuff could possibly happen.
Yeah, it's definitely not a stretch, especially with the whole Derrick Henry factor and keeping Lamar Jackson off the field.
Yeah.
So he can't beat you if he's not on the field. And Derrick Henry, we know, you give him 20 carries, that defense is going to wear down, and he's eventually going to, break one.
Yeah, and Ryan Tannehill has played off the charts. And the thing that's impressed me about Tannehill is even like this last week, with no running game, he still threw the ball and played really well. So I think with that being said, with a healthy Derrick Henry, I think Tennessee is a legit dark horse to make a run here. Because if Tannehill's throwing the ball well, and you combine Derrick Henry running for 100 yards, they're solid defensively. I think this is a team that gives matchup problems to every team in the AFC.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
all-
if you look at
go ahead.
them right now, I think they're actually, if they're fully healthy and they have Derrick Henry and they have everyone ready, I think their offense is probably the second best one out there, behind Baltimore maybe. So if you got everyone ready and going, because I mean, Tannehill's been crazy since he took over as a starter. He's completing 70% of his passes. He's got 20 touchdowns. He's done all that in like 9 games. So he's really caught fire. Derrick Henry knows that he's the perfect running back for this team, and the perfect running back to combat someone like Kansas City or Baltimore. I think they have a really good offense. I think they're lined up well. The one question I have is the receivers. But even then, Tannehill went out and threw for a bunch of yards against New Orleans with no running game. So I think they can actually play well despite not having that superstar wide receiver.
All right, Anthony, you got to give us an AFC Championship game, and who goes to the Super Bowl out of the AFC?
I'm gonna go Kansas City, Baltimore, and I think Kansas City does it.
All right, I'm going to go New England, Baltimore, and I think New England does it. I think New England's offense actually looked a little bit better last week, and I really believe that if you play the correct defense against the Baltimore Ravens, that Lamar Jackson will turn the ball over a couple times. Now, if Lamar Jackson does that against New England, New England's going to beat them.
Well, that's something that I don't hear a lot of people saying, is the fact that Bill Belichick, they got him the first time, but now he's going to have – this is going to be the second time he's going to see Lamar Jackson, and he's going to have a lot of time to study.
Yeah, and if you look at past history, a lot of teams that Belichick beats in the playoffs beat him in the regular season.
Yes.
And Sonny Michel looks like he's running the ball a little bit better. And I think home field advantage I doesn't think matters at all when the Patriots are involved. Because as we saw last year, they went to Kansas City, which must be the toughest place that in Seattle to win on the road. And they won the game. And I also think this. If the Patriots are traveling to Baltimore, Baltimore is going to be a decent-sized favorite. Baltimore fans are going to expect to win. Lamar Jackson is going to have more pressure on him than he's ever had in his entire life playing football. This entire team is going to have a huge weight on them because they're going to play a New England Patriots team that has absolutely nothing to lose, because if the Patriots were to get to the championship game, that's farther than most people think they're capable of getting. So you're going to play a 42-year-old Tom Brady with nothing to lose. That's scary. Because if New England was to come out and score right away, that pressure becomes even more intense. And if they fall behind 10-0, 14-0 in New England, then that allows New England to play different defensively, and it forces Lamar Jackson to play a little different. So I think there's a lot of things here pointing to if New England can get the first playoff win, and I don't know if they can. If they host the Chiefs could possibly beat them, because the Chiefs, I think, are damn near overwhelmingly better than them right now. But I'm going to go with Bill Belichick against John Harbaugh. I think it'll be a close game. I'll go with New England. I think right now, Saints-Patriots in the Super Bowl, with the Saints to win the Super Bowl.
Why are you taking the Saints?
Why would I take the Saints over the Patriots? Because I think they're immeasurably better, and I think this. Drew Brees is one of the greatest quarterbacks that ever lived. Lamar Jackson has been one of the best quarterbacks this year. The Saints have Alvin Kamara, who, if he's healthy, is better than what the Ravens got running the ball. The Saints have the best wide receiver in football in Michael Thomas. The Saints have a great pass rush, and the thing is, on the edges, they're really good. And New England has had a real hard time blocking for Tom Brady when he's throwing the ball. And most of that pressure has come from the outside on Brady, which makes Brady step up into the pocket. And Brady doesn't move as well as he once did. I think he still throws the ball pretty much like he always did. I think a lot of this Brady's on the downslide is more of a problem with his wide receivers right now. And I think I'm going to make a prediction now that in the playoffs, Mohamed Sanu will be the guy that helps them get to the Super Bowl. But I think once they get to that Super Bowl, I think the Saints match up really well with them. And as you said, Sean Payton's a guy that's not afraid to win the game. I like Sean Payton. I don't think he's as good as Bill Belichick, but he doesn't have to be as good if his talent is better. And he's got Drew Brees. And Drew Brees right now is the number one quarterback in the NFL if you're going power ranking wise, because who in the last month has played better than Drew Brees? And I think last year, Drew Brees was hurt, or wasn't hurt, had to play all season. And I think that the age thing kind of showed there, and I think you saw him kind of peter out as we got into the playoffs. I think this year, missing the 5 or 6 weeks, I think he is a lot fresher. And right now, he's playing at the top of his game. And him at his top of his game with Alvin Kamara, a pass rush, Marshawn Lattimore, I think the Saints are the best team.
Yeah, I agree with you. If the Saints get to the Super Bowl, I have a hard time seeing them losing. I think another thing we got to talk about with New Orleans is also Marcus Williams, their safety, who's having a phenomenal year as well. So I think they've got players that you don't even know about really in the mainstream who are playing well this year. Demario Davis is another guy who's doing great for New Orleans.
Yeah, but how about this? With Marcus Williams at safety, Marshawn Lattimore is huge to him. Because if you have a shutdown corner, you're much like Richard Sherman with Seattle back in the day, or Richard Sherman now. When you removed Richard Sherman a couple weeks ago, Matt Ryan had a field day. Because I think people forget this. If you watch, most guys that were great safeties had a great corner on one side. Because when you have a great corner on one side, you could just man that guy and then play zone, and it shortens what you got to cover as a safety. And, it helps big time when it comes to defending the pass as a safety. Because if you got Marshawn Lattimore or a Stephon Gilmore with New England, you don't have to worry about that guy anymore. So if you play cover 2, you can still cheat to the opposite side of where Lattimore or Gilmore is, and it just makes it a lot easier to get where you need to be.
Yeah, well, I think New Orleans, like you said, New Orleans got all those options. They've got the talent to make the moves they want to. They got the talent to go for games. Right now, like you said, Drew Brees is on a roll this month. I think he's getting better and better now as we get closer to the playoffs. Michael Thomas is having a phenomenal season. He's at his peak right now. I just think once this team gets rolling, they're not going to lose because they've had so many dramatic losses in the last 2 years. They're not going to want to walk away here. But perhaps maybe Drew Brees' last great opportunity to win a Super Bowl and lose this one.
Yeah. Well, everybody's thought that the last 2 years, too, and then he's still come back. But I think that at some point for him and Brady, time does have to run out. Anthony, anything else you want to talk about before we wrap it up?
No, I just wanted to, add this onto the, on your Super Bowl pick with the whole Brees versus Brady. If it is going to be Brees versus Brady, I feel like everybody who's trying to reinvent the wheel of how to win in the NFL, it's another year of letdowns. Because not only you're going to have one, you're going to have 2 pocket passers.
Well, you did last year, too.
Well, yeah, with Goff.
And you did the year before,
Goff's
too.
a little bit more mobile than Drew Brees and Brady.
But Goff he can run a little bit, but what the hell does that matter? I mean, because he's a pocket passer, because he's a play-action passer.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a play-action guy, which means he could run forward all right, but he doesn't have great hips. But I think this season at the end will prove out that the best way to play quarterback is the way it's always been played. But, Sam, anything else before we wrap it up?
I think we covered just about everything.
All right, guys. I guess no show tomorrow since it's Christmas, right, Anthony?
Yeah, we should take a day off.
All right. We'll be back Thursday to talk about something. Maybe we'll have a guest. Maybe we'll bring Shelley back Thursday or something.
Hey, well, you get Christian Okoye. I saw you tagged him in a Facebook post. I friend requested him. Let's get him on. He's one of my favorite running backs.
We can do that. I've actually got his phone number. So he's been on our Legends show. He was on he wasn't on Survive in Advance. I didn't have him on there because the guy that was my co-host had never heard of him.
I used to use him in Tecmo Bowl when I was a kid.
Everybody used him in Tecmo Bowl. And if you had the New York Giants in Tecmo Bowl, you could never have a field goal kicked against you because Lawrence Taylor would block every one of them. I love Tecmo Bowl. It's a lot better than that Madden crap. All right, guys. Sam, you want to tell everybody where they can follow you on Twitter and where they can find you?
Yeah, you can find me at Sam_Teets33 on Twitter and Instagram. I regularly post my articles there along with a bunch of sports stats, so feel free to go check that out. Drop a like, and I would really appreciate it.
All right, and you even get a little NBA sometimes from Sam. Anthony?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at The Real NFL Guru. You can follow my show at the FF Face Off. You can find me on all the top social media platforms.
All right, guys, and remember, you can follow me at Grueling Truth. Make sure you go check out thegruelingtruth.com. Our NHL Weekly Show is up this morning. Make sure you check that out. Me and Anthony will be back Thursday on the NFL Show. But for now, I don't know. Did I have something else I wanted to add? I think I did. But you can hear us on any place you can find podcasts, including iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher, Spotify. So for Anthony Cervino, Sam Teets, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.